Monday, January 8th, 1996. We're at 14 West Farm Road, Middletown, New Jersey. And there's been a big blizzard on here for the last 3 days. Michael, my son,
That's me, the narrator.
one of my 3 sons is doing the filming. He's been after me to do this for quite a while, so we're finally doing it because there's a blizzard. And instead of him flying back to Hawaii where he works with the VA, he wasn't able to get a flight that was canceled. The airports are closed, so we have a day here to play around and try to make a remembrance of what happened to me during the war, World War II that is, and some of the things that I have to remember. And, if I forget anything, Mike, you can pop it in. Mike wanted to say something about where I was born. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, March 16th, 1922. Had 2 older brothers and 1 younger sister. My oldest brother Joseph died before I was born, and my older brother Ray, he was always my protector and guidance as we grew up. My father and mother were both born in this country. My father was of German heritage, my mother of Hungarian. So that's where we get our good looks from, I guess. And let's see. I went to St. Lawrence's grade school, graduated in 1935. Then I went on to Central Catholic Christian Brothers High School. I graduated in 1939. Of course, the Nazi war machine had started up at this time. There was a lot of talk about the United States possibly getting into the war. We were trying to maintain neutrality, but Adolf Hitler and his gang kept getting stronger and taking over more and more of Europe. And when they marched in and took over Poland, they were threatening Great Britain. The United States decided, well, it was time to get in to help out the Allies. And of course, Germany at that time was getting together with Japan, and Japan was supposed to take over the Far East, and Germany was supposed to take over everybody, every place else, including the United States. So the young people, including myself, had great desire to do our part. And anyhow, when I graduated from high school in 1939, it was still Depression time. My first job was as a stock clerk in a bottle factory, where I earned 25 cents an hour, which is $10 a week. From that, they took Social Security and things like that. So there wasn't a heck of a lot of money to spend. But of course, a good ice cream cone at that time only cost 5 cents compared to $1 or so today. So you got a lot for your money. My second job after 10 months at the bottle factory was to work for Westinghouse Electric, East Pittsburgh, where I increased my salary by 50%. But then I had to spend some time on the streetcar to get from East Liberty to East Pittsburgh, which was another half an hour ride, plus a couple car checks, which at that time were 3 for a quarter. So it wasn't too bad. It was good education. And at that time, they were starting to draft young fellows like myself. So rather than be drafted, I decided I wanted to enlist. So I picked the Air Corps because I thought airplanes flew so high and so fast that it would be a good, safe place to be. Of course, I found out later it wasn't so safe, which I'll tell you about later. But, so in March of '43, I enlisted in the Air Corps, Air Cadets, and left Pittsburgh on a cold March day, heading south to Nashville, Tennessee. So I thought, I'm going south, it's warm down south. So I didn't dress too warmly. I wore a thin jacket, and they put us on a train with no heat. So we were all pretty much shivering on the way down, although we were young and could take it pretty good. The barracks in Nashville were heated with big coal stoves, and they weren't very comfortable, but it was little education, and we all got through it all right. From Nashville, I requested to be sent to a navigation school, Air Corps navigation school. So I was sent to Monroe, Louisiana. So I spent about the next 9 months in Monroe, Louisiana, where it was super hot, and I got a good suntan and worked off all the fat that I might have had. I never was very fat, to tell the truth, but we would go out for an hour of athletic calisthenics in the hottest part of the day, where we might run for an hour, and you would end up dripping wet with perspiration dropping off your fingertips as you ran. So it was pretty good, tough training. I remember I only got in trouble once after coming back from an hour's worth of running. We were supposed to quickly take a shower, get dressed, and run up and stand with the group for reveille, I guess you call it, where they blow this bugle and everyone salutes the flag. Well, at that point, I didn't feel like running any further, and the group sergeants or whatever they were, after sitting around playing cards, see, they didn't have to do the calisthenics and the exercise, but they were supposed to get us to hurry up to get into formation. So I was moving pretty fast, but I wasn't running. And one of these sub sergeants or whatever he was started yelling at me to run faster, run faster. And I think I gave him the finger or said something nasty. Anyhow, he put me on report, so that the next Saturday, when we were supposed to go on leave for the afternoon, instead of me going right out on leave, I had to put a pack on and walk an hour in front of the headquarters as punishment for giving the guy the finger for making me run when I didn't feel like running. But that's about the only problem I got into. I was a pretty good student, had no problem with education, navigation, training, learning about the stars. I still have an interest in the stars. But so I graduated in 1943 and was sent home for a little week or so before being assigned to Peyote, Texas for B-17 training. A funny little incident happened on my trip from Pittsburgh to Peyote, Texas. We took a train from Pittsburgh to Chicago, then from Chicago south to Texas. when we got on the train in Chicago, there were no seats. So my friend that I was traveling with, another graduate from the Air Force Academy, my buddy and I, we walked through the whole train. There was no seats anywhere until we got to the last coach, and here's a beautiful coach, first class coach, you know, and there was hardly anyone in there except a few black fellas. So we went in, we sat down, and were enjoying the ride until we got to the Mason-Dixon line. And at that time, they had what they call a Jim Crow car, I guess, which was a beautiful car. But someone complained that us white fellas were in a black person's car, and we should get out. So the conductor politely come up and said, well, you're officers and you're going to combat training, but that's beside the point. We crossed the Mason-Dixon line, and white people have to get out of the black person's car. So we were chased out to the front, and I guess we found some place to sit. I don't know, it wasn't very comfortable, but we got to Texas okay.
I guess you guys thought that since you were officers going to fight a war for your country that you should be able to sit anywhere you wanted. Was that it?
Well, we kind of felt that, yes, that's true, that we were on our way to combat and we were officers, and, but laws are laws and rules are rules, and we got chased out of the nice, comfortable car we were in. Anyhow, when we got to Peyote, Texas, there was no assignments for another week or so. So we were close to El Paso, 120 miles, and right across from El Paso is Juarez, Mexico, which is a very interesting town where they have bullfights and good, interesting bars. So we decided, well, we'll try to get a pass and go to Juarez, Mexico, in El Paso first. Well, we couldn't get a pass, so about 4 of us decided, well, there's nothing going on, they won't miss us, so we just slipped away and off we went to El Paso, and we went into a local Army unit to ask for a pass to go to Juarez. It was a artillery unit. We were Air Corps people, and they said, well, why don't you go to the airport and get your pass? Well, we said, well, we heard we were supposed to come here to this artillery place. So they thought it was kind of skeptical, but they gave us passes to go to Juarez anyhow, and we went over and saw a bullfight, saw some of the other sights. Didn't do anything too bad.
No cat houses or anything?
No, we were offered some entertainment that we declined. But anyhow, we got back and started our training, our B-17 training, which on one of the first missions, I think there was maybe 9 or more planes were supposed to fly from Peyote to El Paso and turn around from El Paso and fly back. Well, some of the navigators apparently weren't too good or lazy, so the lead navigator, pilot, they put on the radio compass, which points the airplane directly to the place it's trying to go, and they did not correct for drift. Now, we were up about 15 to 20,000 feet, and the jet streams up there, it was blowing us, we were going 200 miles an hour, true airspeed, towards El Paso, but the jet stream was blowing us off course by about 180 miles an hour. So instead of flying on a straight line to El Paso, we were flying a big circle route because the jet stream was blowing us off course, and I was doing navigation the way you're supposed to. I was checking dead reckoning, which means you look at the ground to see where you are, and you check your drift and you see what the side winds are. And I see we're drifting across the Rio Grande and into Mexico, and I see there's mountains over there, and I wonder if we go much further, we're going to run into those high mountains. But the lead navigator, he didn't seem to care much about that. So El Paso is directly west from Peyote. Well, we ended up flying a big circle where we ended up flying directly north to get to El Paso. Well, after getting there, the plane I was in was assigned to be the lead plane, and I was put in charge of being the lead navigator to fly back. Well, I had calculated the drift and the wind velocity, direction, so I made a heading based upon all those things, and when it took us an hour and a half to get to El Paso coming back, because I flew a better course with a correction for the 180 mile an hour wind, we got back in a half an hour. I said to the pilot, ETA for landing is in 5 minutes. He couldn't believe me. So I says, well, look down. You can see the airports, and you can see Pecos, which is another town 20 miles west of Peyote. I said, there's Pecos. Peyote's right behind it. So he went down, and I went in to report this high wind velocity to the metro people, and they said, well, that's nothing. It's always windy like that up at the high altitudes. So it was good education. So then we graduated from that training. They sent us on to Kearney, Nebraska, where we were to pick up a brand new B-17 and fly it across the United States, up to Goose Bay, Labrador, and then over to Iceland, and then down to Scotland. And we were, of course, all brand new guys, pilot, co-pilot, and the bombardiers were a special raunchy gang. The bombardier that I had in Texas, he was supposed to train me something about being a bombardier, at least show me what buttons to push in order to drop the bombs. Well, the bombardier we had in Texas, he decided he wasn't going to combat. He was going to catch some kind of venereal disease where he'd end up in the hospital, and he wouldn't have to go to combat. Well, he caught venereal disease, and he ended up going to the hospital, so I don't know whatever happened to him after that. The second bombardier we got up in Kearney, Nebraska, he got into a fight in a bar, ended up getting a broken jaw, so we left him in the hospital with his teeth wired together. So we picked up our third navigator, I think in England, or when we got to England, a fellow named Maury Lorette, who ended up with me in the prison camp later on, after we were shot down. But it was interesting, it was our flight across the United States. We're flying about 15,000 feet, maybe 18. We were on oxygen, and the pilot kept putting more throttle, and he wasn't able to maintain his altitude. He called down to me and said, navigator from pilot, tell me what the land elevation is. Are there any mountains in front of us? Any high points? And I looked and I told him what the elevation was. And he says, we're having a little trouble maintaining our altitude. Then they remembered they were flying through the clouds and they were picking up ice on the wings and on the propellers. And they had forgotten to turn on the de-icers, which are rubber things in the front of the wings that crack off the ice, and heating elements in the propellers that melts off the ice. So finally they put on the de-icers, and the ice now starts cracking off, and when it flies off the propeller, it was hitting against the side of the plane. It sounded like we were in a air raid being bombed. But anyhow, after they got the ice off, the plane flew much better. The radio man was a crazy fellow named Sparrow, of course, and we had forgotten to bring along a commode. It was only supposed to be like a 4 or 5 hour trip, but he had to relieve himself. So we wondered, how are we going to do this? So he asked if we could open up the bomb bay doors, and then he would crawl down into the bomb bay area, and with a carrier on oxygen bottle, he would pull down his heavy flying suit, which at that time was a leather suit. Mine was fleece, but he had to relieve himself, so he was going to hang out the bomb bay doors and drop it down over the fields of Kansas or wherever we happened to be. Maybe it was Ohio. But we didn't worry about what was down there. I mean, it was mostly farm country. But then, as he's trying to get back up, he gets jammed in the gears of the door, and now we're wondering what's going to happen to poor Sparrow. He can't go up or down or whatever, so we finally cut him loose and get him back into the airplane. So that was a little excitement. Nothing much happened further than that till we got to Massachusetts, and then Sparrow asked us to do a little low flying over his area where he lived, which we did that. Then we landed in Westoverfield, Massachusetts for the night. Next day we fly up to Goose Bay, Labrador. Well, that was a little difficult. I didn't realize, but it was March, and the whole area in Canada was covered with snow. So when you look down and you try to see something, all you see is white snow everywhere. So dead reckoning is a little difficult when you can't hardly see anything on the ground. But we made it up to Goose Bay, Labrador pretty good, and the pilot made a perfect landing. The field was covered with snow, but on either side of the runway and the taxi strips, the snowbanks were up about 25 feet high, and he managed to clip one of the snowbanks lightly with a wing, which did not do any damage, but it scared us a bit. The icicles up there went straight from the roof right down to the ground, no break, so it was very cold. Then our next step was to fly from Goose Bay, Labrador over to Iceland, and we were going to fly at night. And when you're out over the ocean at night, at that time there were no radio signals for the pilot to guide himself. He was relying upon the navigator, which was me. And it was the first time and the only time I ever used celestial navigation, where I hooked up my celestial compass and zeroed in on Polaris, which is the North Star, and that way you can guide very accurately your direction. The magnetic compass in those northern latitudes is not very good at all, because the variations are much too much, and you cannot rely on the magnetic compass at all. So the celestial compass came in very handy.
Why was there no radio beam that you could follow to get there?
Well, I think when they got closer to to Iceland. Iceland was probably sending out a beam. But the big problem with radio beams was that Iceland, Scotland, England, they were all afraid to send out signals because the Nazi German bombers could zero in on those signals to bomb the Air Force elements in Iceland or Scotland or England. So they were using those signals very carefully. Anyhow, we got to Iceland and there was a blizzard just starting. Thank God we landed before the blizzard closed the airfield. There were several other B-17s come over after us, and they had to crash on the beach because they wouldn't allow them to land at the airport for fear that they would land and crash the buildings. So they would rather risk losing a B-17 than losing some of the buildings and people at the airfield. So we lost a few B-17s at that occasion. Well, the next day we were supposed to fly from Iceland to Scotland, Prestwick, Scotland. And so before I left, I got weather information, drift, what the wind velocities were, and off we went. Now, we were flying in the clouds, and we're flying over water. So it is impossible to re-drift. When you're flying in the clouds, you can't see anything. You can't see the sun. You can't take any direction, celestial navigation from the sun. You can't re-drift. You're going strictly on your weather information you got from the weatherman before you left. So I had set the course, and I tuned in Prestwick, Scotland, who was sending out a pretty strong beam. And with my radio compass, I kept seeing that we were right on course. The radio compass would point that we were flying directly to Prestwick, Scotland. And we were about 150 miles out when all of a sudden I turned on the radio compass, and instead of it showing that it was straight in front of us, it showed it was 90 degrees to the left. Well, that was very disturbing, because if that radio compass was right, it meant I was flying 90 degrees off course. Instead of flying to Scotland, I was flying right out into the Atlantic Ocean, and we would run out of gas, and that would be the end of us. Well, I figured that I couldn't be that wrong. I checked my magnetic compass, and it was pretty good at that latitude. I started to try to make radio fixes from radio stations I was picking up in Ireland, different places in England, and I was trying to make fixes, and those things were checking out that my course was still good. And I did not change to fly 90 degrees to the left. Well, what actually happened, Prestwick, Scotland was afraid that there was going to be a German air raid, so they shut off the signal, the Prestwick signal. The Germans over in Norway, which was just maybe 50, 75 miles to the east, they start beaming this Prestwick signal out from Norway to lure B-17 pilots and navigators that weren't too sure what they were doing, to lure them over to Norway, where they would capture them. They would set up fighters that would direct them into a German airfield in Norway and capture them. Well, the British, they realized what was happening too, so they sent up RAF planes, Hurricanes, I guess, to catch the B-17s before the Germans got a hold of them and try to direct them back to Scotland. Well, anyhow, I never told the pilot what was going on, that there was total confusion as far as the Prestwick signal was. I did ask the radio man to call into Prestwick and get a direction on his high-powered radio. But Spiral, of course, was not a very good radio man. He never did get back to me to tell me what I wanted to know, but we got to Scotland, and thank God, within a few minutes of my estimated time, ETA, estimated time of arrival. And the pilot, of course, when you get that close, he picks up contact with the field, and he landed the plane in Prestwick, Scotland. So we spent the night there in an old castle.
It's a good thing, though, Dad, that you decided not to rely on that Norwegian radio beam and say that, gee, I must be wrong, that you trusted yourself enough to know that you would plot a new course despite the faulty radio beam.
Well, it was my good training at Central Catholic, I guess, and confidence in myself that I did the right thing, and maybe a little luck mixed in there. Anyhow, so we get to spend the night there in Scotland. We didn't get to see too much. The war was really fierce at this point. There was a shortage of air crew people, pilots, navigators, and we were assigned, my crew was assigned to the 100th Bomb Group at Thorpe Abbotts in England, which is what they call the Wash. It's in between Ipswich and Norwich, and there's quite a few airfields, Army airfields around there, but ignorance is bliss, and we didn't realize what we were getting into, but we were being assigned to what they called the Bloody Hundredth, and the 100th Bomb Group apparently was losing more planes being shot down than any other bomb group. And for some reason or other, the German Air Force decided they were going to, anytime the 100th was going to fly, they were going to shoot down the 100th. At least that was the story. And it went back to one of the earlier missions when a B-17 from the 100th Bomb Group was injured, was damaged, and had to drop out of formation. And two German planes, pursuits rather than shoot it down, the B-17 pilot lowered his landing gears as a sign he was surrendering. And when the two German pursuit planes pulled in, one on either side to guide him into the German airfield, the waist gunners opened fire and shot down the German pursuit planes, and the B-17 pilot pulled up his wheels and flew back to England. That's the story. I'm still trying to find out whether it's true or not, but for some reason or other, we were the Bloody Hundreds. And my first mission, because there was a shortage of navigators, I was assigned to fly with a crew that was flying on their 25th mission, and if they finished their 25th mission, they would be allowed to go back home to the United States. I was on my first mission, so I had a long way to go, but the pilot, before I got on the plane, told me that the bombardier was flak happy. I mean, he was so nervous that he might do something crazy. And he said that if he did something crazy, I should push him out of the way and I should drop the bombs. Well, I didn't tell the pilot about my experience in Texas, where the bombardier didn't teach me anything about being a bombardier. And I didn't know the first thing about dropping bombs, even what lever to push, or so forth. So we take off, we fly up to high altitude, 20,000 feet, and our mission, our target was a factory town in Poland. And we flew across the North Sea, across Denmark, across the Baltic, into Poland. When we got there, the entire area was covered with tremendous clouds. So the lead plane, there's an 18-ship formation. The lead plane decided, well, they couldn't drop the bombs, they couldn't even find the target. Now the plan was that we would be on a course, on a bomb run, where we would be making a true airspeed of 200 miles an hour with a 100-mile-an-hour tailwind, so that we would be flying straight and level on this bomb run with a 300-mile-an-hour speed. And that is good, because then it's more difficult for any aircraft to shoot you down, or pursuit planes to shoot you down. So, but when we got to the target, the lead pilot decided, well, he couldn't drop bombs there. So he decided to look for a target of opportunity, which means he now flew into Germany looking for a target of opportunity. Well, the Germans, you know, they're not too happy with 18 B-17s flying around in Germany. So the next thing I see, now it's my first mission, you know, I'm just as green as can be. I see a Ju-88, which is a twin-engine German plane. It's off in a distance, and I see flashes coming from under its wings. And I realize it's over there shooting rockets at us, you know. And in my training, I was never told about the Nazi Air Force having rockets that they would shoot at us as B-17. But that happened. And thank God the rockets were not too accurate. They missed us. Now the lead pilot decides, well, he'll fly to Rostock, which is a seaport town right on the Baltic, east of Denmark. And we would drop our bombs, 18-ship formation, we'd drop our bombs on a railroad in the sea faring area in Rostock. The only problem is now, instead of having a 100-mile-an-hour tailwind, we have a 100-mile-an-hour headwind. And so we're flying 200-mile-an-hour airspeed with a 100-mile-an-hour headwind. So we're just drifting along 100 miles an hour where we should be going 300. Now, being green, I'm doing what they say you're supposed to do. I'm looking out the window, I'm opening the escape hatch, I'm checking to see if I see any railroad activity, ships in the harbor or whatever. I'm noting things in my log. Meanwhile, the flak-happy bombardier is crouched like a little puppy dog on a piece of armor plate right up by the nose, in his nose section of the plane. So I said to myself, oh, poor guy's, you know, he's all scared, you know, he's don't know what he's doing. And then I'm looking out the window, and I pull my head back, and all of a sudden there's a hole in the side of the plane right where I had my head, and a piece of flak, shrapnel, about the size, half the size of a baseball, came through the wall of the plane, right where I had my head a minute ago, or a second ago, hit the machine gun, which was one of my 2 machine guns, and dropped on my desk, still steaming red hot. And I looked at that piece of shrapnel, and I said, if I would have been looking out the window at this point, I would have probably gotten hit in the head with that. So I said to myself, that bombardier that's crouched on that armor plate is not crazy. He knows what he's doing. I said, I'm crazy. I don't know what I'm doing. So I decided to follow his example. So I crouched down, and there happened to be a piece of armor plate under my desk, or by my desk, because this plane, you know, after 25 missions, these fellows had the thing armor plated as much as possible. So I sat down on the armor plate. I had a flak suit, which I had in front of me and back of me. I had a flak helmet I pulled down over my ears. So I kept my eye on the compass and all the indicators so that I could still do navigation, but I decided not to go looking out the window anymore or looking out the escape hatch door. I try to make myself as small as possible. Now, over the intercom, I hear a report that there are German pursuit planes coming in at 9 o'clock. Well, my window looks out at 3 o'clock, which is 180 degrees in the other direction. So I try to see these German pursuit planes because I did have a machine gun to operate on that side of the plane, but the wing was in my view, so I couldn't see. But I hear over the intercom that there was, I think 5 pursuit planes coming in at us. Then all of a sudden I hear the number 1 German plane explodes. Then the second German plane runs into that plane, or apparently it explodes. Then the 3 other German pursuit planes decide that maybe we have a secret weapon or something, but they decide to turn around and leave. But thank God they did, because if they would have come in at us, I think we might have lost a few planes there. But now we dropped our bombs. The bombardier did a fine job. I think he had a string tied up to the toggle switch. He just, when the lead plane dropped their bombs, he pulled the toggle switch and he dropped his bombs, and off we went over. Now we're flying out over the Baltic.
What were you thinking at this point in your first mission? You had planes firing rockets at you. You never knew rockets existed. You get a report of 5 pursuit German planes ready to attack. You're getting your machine gun ready. What were you thinking?
I was thinking I should have went to Canada. I was thinking I got into a bad spot here, but anyhow.
And this story goes from bad to worse, if I remember.
Well, there were a few missions that weren't that bad. This was a tough mission.
Yes.
I saw planes spinning down, being hit, and I got very well educated on the fact that when a plane is hit, you don't have much time to bail out. You have to get out of that plane pretty quick before it blows up. And of course, you're supposed to wait till the pilot gives you the signal. But anyhow, we're in this, we just dropped our bombs on Rostock. We're heading out over the Baltic. So the pilot calls down to me for a heading to Sweden. And the reason he did that, there was a fire in the cockpit